Well, what's up, Colliders? Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Live. We're back after our 1 week vacation. Took this week off, but excited to be back. But I am not here alone. I am honored, privileged to be joined at the desk, as I always am, by the disgusting, moldy, leftover food shoved into the back drink holders to my family minivan, Mr. Samuel David Camp. What is up?
Not too much, Daniel. It's good to be with you. Happy to kind of have the holidays behind us and look forward to many more weeks of cold and flu season. So it's been good.
It is one of the traditions of Christmas is that you always spend like the next 6 months after Christmas sick with something, especially if you have young kids.
Which we do, and we are.
So I was sick last week. Wasn't feeling up to foggy brained and kind of flu-like symptoms, and I know Sam and our crew just couldn't imagine spending a Wednesday without me here, just leaving that void in their hearts.
It was hard. I just binged all of the episodes up till now to get me through.
To get your Daniel fix. But hey, we're excited to have you guys join us. A lot of stuff to talk about. Again, we have a bit of a backlog of topics, so excited to jump into that. If you've never joined us before, welcome. This is just our weekly live stream podcast where we look at kind of what's all the craziness, what's going on in pop culture this week, and what does that mean for us as Christians? What does it mean for the church? How do we understand it? How do we learn from it? How do we engage with it, push back against it? All that fun stuff. So I encourage you guys, jump into the comment section. Let's have a conversation about this. But like I said, we do have some interesting stuff to get into. So why don't we kick things off like we always do with our first segment, Cultural Conversations.
I know we've been doing cultural conversations for a long time, but every time I always think of pop culture news because it was the segment, and so every time we come up to the segment, I always think you're going to say pop culture news.
I like the Collision Live back when it was pop culture news.
I've been around that long.
You're a true fan. If you guys have been with us from the start, basically the same thing we just say every now and then, change it up, get some new branding. And speaking of branding, it really does bring me no pleasure that we've ever had to talk about controversy surrounding M&Ms once on this live stream, and it brings me even less pleasure to do so twice. And so if you follow kind of the news, pop culture at all, kind of in the last week, you'll know that people are talking about M&Ms, and not just because they're tasty, and not just because the white chocolate M&Ms are objectively the best.
Except for peanut M&Ms,
but which is that's definitely in the running. But M&Ms they've been a controversial candy as far as candies go for the last kind of year, dating back to when they kind of rebranded themselves, and no longer were they just about making your taste buds feel good. Like they were also here to help you process your human existence and understand the world and deal with your mental anxiety and your romantic feelings and all that kind of stuff. So they kind of rebranded their M&Ms and gave them more distinct personalities and kind of more of a reflection of the world today, the good, and as many people were quick to point out, also the bad. So that's been kind of going on for a while, and some the controversy simmered down, and people kind of forgot about the fact that that happened. But they're back. So they made news. I think maybe it was yesterday or else the day before that, with kind of a viral post where, again, we don't need to necessarily read all of it. But it says, "America, let's talk. In the last year, we've made some changes to our beloved spokes candies. We weren't sure if anyone would even notice. And we definitely didn't think it would break the internet. But now we get it. Even a candy's shoes can be polarizing, and which is the last thing that M&M's wanted, since we're all about bringing people together." And then they kind of go on to say, hey, we're retiring our kind of controversial candy cartoon figures, and we're bringing in, what's her name, Maya Rudolph, the actress, SNL actress, someone we can all agree on, and she'll be the new spokesperson. So you hear all this, because, again, this is, in a lot of ways, this story is silly and kind of as dumb as the fact, hey, we're talking about M&Ms. It is, I think, a reflection of, bigger things going on. And I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure how to take this, because I don't know if this could either be a very sincere okay, maybe making candies are purpose to help people deal with serious issues wasn't the best idea, or else this can be a total kind of internet troll to set up a Super Bowl ad in a couple weeks. But what is your takeaway? Do you have any? Will you be sad to see the candy spokes people retiring?
No, I can't say that I will be sad. I mean, I guess I'll miss the little guys when they're, saving the world and stuff. I think was the latest one. Like they're always like dismantling a bomb or cutting it on a helicopter. That was fun, but like I don't I don't like commercials in general, and I just I just don't think there's much that I could care less about than like how a candy company brands their candy. And so no, I mean to me, I would read this as like, hey, we want to go a different direction with how we brand, and so this is a great scapegoat, and like we'll make a little buzz about it, and no, what is it? No news is bad, or whatever the saying is, where like there's no such thing as bad publicity, and so like they can just make this statement and generate some buzz, and then everybody's gonna be talking about M&Ms, and then have a big Super Bowl ad with their new spokesperson that clearly everybody probably does agree on. Which, if you have to say everyone agrees on this, then there's a good chance that not everyone agrees on this. That's just the nature of life. Like, no one's going to agree on everything. Not everyone's going to agree on certain things. And so, I don't know. I would probably take a more cynical look at this and just say, like, this is all, it's all dumb to me. But
because this was, I think, like, regardless of, like, what's going to come of this sort of U-turn on it, like if it's like a fake out or if it's actually like, okay, maybe that really like was as bad of an idea as we all thought it would be. Like whatever comes from it, like it is a reflection of like, because like they weren't the only company, like candy or like, ice cream company or like this sort of this trend of like this
brand activism.
Yeah,
I guess
like
is what you could call it.
You can garner more attention by like making your chocolate bar take some like controversial political stance than you can by like doing the 1000th commercial of like showing the caramel coming out. Like it's like, so in some ways like it's just like I don't know how sincere they really are about like here at M&M like our number one thing is to like bring people together.
We make chocolate candies, but more than that,
we
care about the mental health of our customers. It's like, no, this is whatever it is, like no matter how genuine or cynical their approach, the bottom line is they're trying to sell you more candies, and so it's like you give all the warm fuzzies or be controversial. What they care about is more people talking about and consuming M&Ms at the end of the day. It's not about like the mental health and well-being of their customers.
And we would like to say that this episode of the Collision Live is brought to you by M&M candies. Go get yourself a bag. White chocolate is the best,
except for peanut.
But I do hope that this is like, if this is sincere, like kind of a U-turn, I hope this is the end of this sort of movement of like, because even if they were pushing stuff that like, and this is our Christian M&M, like, I don't need my candy to like have beliefs and stuff. Like,
I know.
If I agree with them, or if I believe unity is good, I don't need to see myself in a bag of Skittles.
I hope this is sort of the fizzling out and sputtering of these sort of things happening. That like our candies can go back to being candies and not like cultural touchstones or controversial figures in our lives. We don't need that. Like there's plenty of things to be upset about and to wrestle with in the world, and you don't really need your candy to be one of them.
So hey, who knows? We'll see. Maybe we'll follow up on this if anything comes from it. But as it seems, R.I.P. to the spokes candies. But maybe another like cultural movement, which seems to be on the other end of the spectrum of not dying down, but the start of maybe like a bigger thing. So this happened, I think actually like 2 weeks ago, but again, like I said, we missed last week's episode, and it is, I think, a relevant thing as Christians and just as people in this country to process, because I think it's reflective of some bigger stuff. So this, if you've been following the news at all, kind of this whole hubbub controversy circling around an NHL player for the Philadelphia Flyers. And sort of his decision to not participate in the pregame like every team has Pride Night. This is almost standard now across, I think, all sports. But hockey, kind of this like hockey is for everyone initiative. So they do a Pride Night, and usually like the pregame players like have like rainbow tape or else like rainbow jerseys, or they do something and then they auction them off for charity after for like these more inclusive charities and organizations. So that's been going on probably for a couple years. But this is at least the first one that's been like made news for a player that elected, again, his name is Ivan Provolov, said, hey, because of my religion, I don't want to participate in the pregame. I'll play the game and I'll still be there. But I don't necessarily want to have that branding on me because, again, he later in like a follow-up interview said it's like Russian Orthodox. Kind of his only post-game conversation about this is that, hey, I respect everyone's choices. My choice is to stay true to myself and my religion. That's all I'm going to say about it. But that's not all that like this other people had to say about it.
Yeah.
People weren't satisfied, and this sort of whole thing went off the rails for people just like piling on him, like calling him a bigot and homophobic and an awful person and hateful and probably the most like the one that went viral at least, which we have the clip for. This is on the NHL Network. This is like one of the official, the senior reporter for the NHL Network. Kind of took some time to share his opinions on sort of this athlete choosing not to participate due to his religion. So let's play the clip and then we'll kind of dig into this.
And Ivan Provorov can get on a plane any day he wants and go back to a place where he feels more comfortable, take less money, and get on with his life that way. If it's that problematic for him. And he's been in North America for a long time. He played in the Western Hockey League. He's now been in Philadelphia for many years. If this is that much of a problem for him to maybe assimilate into his group of teammates and in the community and here in this country, that's okay. Listen, you can feel any way you want. But the beauty is, if it bothers you that much, there's always a chance to leave, go back where you feel more comfortable. I understand there's a conflict of sorts going on over there. Maybe get involved.
So Sam, would you say that the beauty of having a different opinion is that you have the freedom to go die in the trenches of a foreign war? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what America stands for. It's like you can believe whatever you want, and if it's wrong, you can go die in battle.
So this is crazy. Obviously, that's the most I think unhinged response.
I think if you look up unhinged in the dictionary, you're going to see that, guys.
To that, there were a lot of other kind of equally forceful, like pushbacks, maybe not quite as like just over the top of like, hey, if you don't believe, believe what you want, but if it's not what I want you to believe, then get out of this country, and we don't want you here, and you got to assimilate, and that's what America's about, to make everyone believe the same thing.
Yeah.
So the whole thing.
We're not about diversity.
So the whole thing is crazy. But so what are your thoughts about? 'Cause that is like, in one sense, it shines the spotlight on like the difficulty of like being a religious athlete or figure in kind of in the spotlight, where like, but also I think it reflects kind of this cultural time that we're in of like, it's not enough to just like agree with or like support or give freedom for other people, but like there's also, unless you like wear our branding and like march out, our movement, then you're hateful and you're wrong, and you don't have freedom to do that. So what are some of your thoughts on this?
I think anytime something like this happens, I think it's good to think about let's just play sort of like a religious mix and match here. So let's say this guy was a Muslim and he said, because of my religion, I'm going to abstain from participating in this thing that I disagree with. And this commentator goes on and rants about, if you don't like it, go back where you came from, which is like a total right wing trope. Like, and I'm sure the guy's not right wing, but it's like, if that seems a bit icky, like if your response to, like, if you just tweak some of the issues, then I think that sort of reveals like how you should maybe think about it, because it's like if these, if the religion was different, if he was of a different ethnicity and you had trouble being that like against him, then I think like let's rethink how you respond to this. And like again, I think it highlights just how graceless our society is in general, but obviously like this is an instance where it's very anti Christian at least, and it's sort of anti the thing that that everyone believes in. And so it's like if you don't toe the party line, it's like you can have diverse thought as long as it's in this.
It's like we want tolerance, and if you're not going to be tolerant like we are, then we're going to be very intolerant and kick you out. And we do have Monty says in the chat, says, go back to where you came from is now a left-wing talking point. I can't keep up, which is what you were saying. Like there is this sort of this, because there's a double standard on both sides. Like, and again, I don't want to make this necessarily a political thing. I think it is more like, I think the religious aspect, but like the same with like the kneeling before the flag, or like it's sort of like we pick and choose when it's okay. It's like, either that was good, but this player can't sit out and practice his belief, or else you need to, as a Christian, you need to stand up. But then we don't like that people protest or make their own statements. Like you see both sides of sort of like it's okay when we agree with it, but if you go against with what we agree, then like you just need to sort of be a team player and just do it anyways, or not. Or not do it. And the thing that too, and even like his coach, which I don't believe is a Christian, kind of came to his defense a bit, and sort of saying like, it's not like he's, like while they're doing that, like he's standing in the stand with like a hateful, flag or something, or like yelling at people, or like throwing pucks. Like he just drew the line at like like it's like for all we know, like he's very loving towards that community, and like it's just like the line between like I just don't feel comfortable like wearing like promoting using my my body in a sense, or attire to like promote that.
Well, and I think that shows just how performative so much of this is. Like even going back to like the candies and all the sort of brands and companies that just have the right slogans and say the right thing and give the right lip service to whatever mob du jour. And so like I think for this, it's like all people care about is like just wear the right thing, do the right thing, like, and that has no bearing on like how they actually feel towards this. It's like you could have a very like hateful person, but if they're wearing a rainbow shirt, that's okay, because like, hey, they're part of our team. But it's like character and like how the people actually behave is almost secondary now to like, but did you wear the shirt, or did you fly the flag?
Yeah, I
or
guess
did you
it's
do the
very
thing?
much like checking the boxes.
Yeah, it's like it almost doesn't even matter like
and
what they say or how they
and I think like
behave.
as Christians and stuff, like it does this shines such a light on like how far we've come from like the why do Christians care about what people do in their bedroom or who they love, or like it's like this is sort of the other end of that, of like not only do you need to like allow us freedom to live our life, but like you also need to like be our publicity.
You need to bless it.
So you do see these, and I do wonder if this will either scare people away, athletes, like I don't want to be under the firing squad by making a stance, or if it will open the door to like have a discussion of like maybe we shouldn't necessarily force and like kind of crucify athletes for whatever the stance is.
Yeah.
Like making them, they don't have a choice. Like he's hired to play hockey. Like he's not hired to like make social stands or whatever that those are. So, hey, let us know what you guys think. It is this sort of a big messy situation that I am curious sort of the longer term impact, if there is any, or if it's just we'll forget it and move on to like what Skittles does next or whatever the next controversy. Real quick, I don't want to spend too much time on these ones, because I want to make sure we have time for kind of our main conversation. I kind of lumped two separate stories that seem not at all connected in a way, maybe only in my mind, but I do think they're, because I think some of our conversation about them will be kind of linked in some of the same points. I thought we'd maybe just throw them together. So the first one is Splash Mountain is no longer Splash Mountain, kind of one of the oldest rides at Disney World, and kind of the famous water ride, which has been controversial for a long time due to kind of like being based on the Brer Rabbit, the Song of the South, the infamous Disney movie, which has been you can't even see it. It's been banned for like 50 years, and because of some of the racist or racial stuff in that movie. So it's always been kind of called into question. Finally, Disney took the move to finally cut it off. I think yesterday was the last day of Splash Mountain, and it's going to be rebranded to go along with the Princess and the Frog Disney movie, and I think similar ride, just different robot things and characters and songs, and it's not tied to like the controversial thing. So there's that. And again, people are protesting that and mad about that, and that's woke Hollywood, and I think people are selling like bags of Splash Mountain water on eBay for like hundreds of dollars. So hey, if you have a couple of $100, go buy some Splash Mountain water. So that's become this whole cultural war thing. And the other one that kind of that also came out the other day, which kind of falls in somewhat of the same category. So the Oscars, they're announcing their kind of the nominees for this year's Oscars, and a Hollywood reporter tweet about one of the nominees quickly went viral, kind of instantly dragged into this culture war thing, where Michelle Yeoh, the tweet says, has made history as the first person who identifies as Asian to ever be nominated for Best Actress. And as you can imagine, those words, identifies as Asian, did not sit well with a lot of people. Kind of very quickly, if you read the comments underneath that tweet, woo, like it's a war zone there. There's a lot of things being said, not very nicely, and just sort of assuming things that for what that means. Which if you actually read the article, which I know is
Who does that, Daniel?
who does that? If you read
What is this reading you speak of?
if you read the article, of kind of what that means, really doesn't mean what I think people, maybe you assume it would mean. It's the meaning behind that is like I think 50 or 60 some years ago, there was another Asian actress that was nominated for Best Actress, although she kind of hid her identity. She passed off as white. She lied about where she came from, and sort of only later it kind of came out. So when she won, it was assumed that she was this white person. It wasn't Asian, and there's been other sort of similar things. So I think what the tweet was trying to indicate is that this is the first time that someone that is very clearly, openly, Asian is winning this and not kind of hiding the identity, and you can kind of criticize some of that. So I kind of view both those stories together. We can touch on one or the other or both, but at least to me, both these just seem like examples of stories that are really nothing stories that quickly become, because they kind of get dragged into this I don't think it really matters to a lot of people the nuance of what there's, you can criticize how they said that, but I don't think it matters the nuance, because it's low hanging fruit for
I mean, it's one of those things that's the first Asian actress to be nominated, that should be celebrated. That's awesome. But because we live in the time that we live, there's going to be problems. And I don't know. I think it's so dumb. I mean, I do think that the tweet was probably badly worded, to say identifies as Asian. I mean, you sort of have to read that as an Asian person. I think because it's that's what they mean. They don't mean ethnicity is now up to you. You decide your ethnicity, not
because that's how. Yeah, because that's exactly how people they let you pick your gender and sex, and now they let you pick and they're gonna let you pick your age, and sort of another example of this craziness. And in one, it is funny to look at other trades and stuff, tweeting the same thing, post that, they are tiptoeing, they are comma, another claw, comma, everything they can do to not leave any ambiguity about what they mean. I don't think they want the same pushback to they want to give the context. So in some sense, again, you can criticize the sort of read the room. Surely they know that that's going to be taken in a way that's not necessarily the case.
But again, to play the cynical card, you could say, well, the Oscars needs a little bit of buzz. And so, like, why not just craft this tweet to be a little more ambiguous and, like, let's just see, let there be some interpretation.
And it very well may be intention, like that they are, like, I don't know, like, it's the Hollywood Reporter. Like,
Yeah.
they're not above that kind of stuff. Like, so
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have an issue with, like, criticizing it or thinking that it was poorly done, but, like, kind of both of those. Like, it's just sort of like, I feel like when you have this, like, culture war posture, like, you just need something
Yeah.
constantly to, and, like, usually there's enough, like, legit stuff that you don't need to look that hard.
Yeah.
But, like, because even, like, Splash Mountain, like, this is a ride that, like, it's not even a fun ride. Like, I don't think anyone really cares about it. Like, it's based on a movie that no one's been able to see in any country for, like, 60 years. Like, it's not like some relevant, like, kids these days aren't like, oh, I just need to, I just love Brer Rabbit. Like, I just love Song of the South. Like, my favorite,
Yeah.
like, of course they're going to update that. Like, why would they not update a ride based on a out of print controversial
Racist.
like even if
cartoon.
it wasn't like the racial stuff of it,
Yeah.
like, just the fact that it's
that.
no one, like, that's not a relevant thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's like I don't think anyone cares about it, but, like,
But the people who can make money by caring about it will care about it. And I think that's what a lot of this, like, there's money to be made in outrage, and so there'll continue to be outrage. Like, and I think that's just sort of part of humanity right now. It's like there's a great cottage industry in sort of taking giant nothing burgers and saying, like, we should all really care about this thing because it's it's woke Hollywood coming for your kids or whatever it is. And so, like, what I hope is, and with pretty much all of the sort of stories we already talked about today and in previous episodes, is that the more sort of ridiculous and, like, nothing that these stories are, I hope we'll start to change some of the conversation so that we can get past some of this initial sort of outrage that kind of happens every time anything gets changed, just because, like, people want to be mad about something.
and just because we feel like, because we're so in such, like, a us versus them sort of culture,
Yeah.
that, like, if them does anything, then, like,
we have
us
to
needs to be against it, and, like, and not just like, hey, I think we can all agree that Splash Mountain could be updated, or, like, hey, that we can all agree, maybe a bad worded tweet, but, like, in this instance, it doesn't really mean what it means here. Like,
right.
so we don't need to be mad about this. Like, we'll be mad about it when people are actually making, just sort of that, like, resisting the reactionary nature of, like, here's the next thing, and we need to care about M&Ms, or now we need to care about, like, Splash Mountain, or so I don't know. Again, we don't have time to get really deep into that, but it just seems like both those, at least to me, were kind of similar as far as just like, hey, the culture war stuff is everywhere, sort of these sort of knee-jerk reactionary stuff. And I think as Christians, be engaged, be aware of it, have conversations, but resist that, like, very reactionary, like, just quick jump to anger. But hey, let us know. Are you sad about Splash Mountain leaving? I think it's a lame ride, but hey, everyone is entitled to their opinion. And if you like it, go buy some Splash Mountain water for a couple $100s on eBay. But I know one thing that is never controversial, never makes anyone mad, only brings joy and happiness to the world, is the next segment of our show. We have Host Corner. So for this week, it's my chance to share some stuff about me. I was sort of all opinionated out. I didn't have any, like, crazy hot takes on anything. So I thought I would go back to kindergarten and do a little show and tell. So if you guys know me, I like Lord of the Rings. I like weapons, and I like weapons from Lord of the Rings. So I thought I would do, and I realized this would be an awful segment for our audio-only podcast, but hey, bear with us. But show off some of the stuff in my collection. Here you have Gimli's axe that hangs in my office, so I can always see it when I'm writing profound articles. If you want to keep clicking through, there you have Sauron's mace. That is visible as soon as you walk in our door. My wife loves that I put it right there. If you want to keep, there's Bilbo's sting. Actually, the first sword I got, Aragorn's sword, one of my favorites, hanging prominently. And then if you click to the last one, two other pictures highlighted by my recent addition of a night lamp. You have Gandalf's sword, Glamdring, and you have the Witch King, the Morgul blade from the Lord of the Rings that stabs Frodo. So again, I don't have any applications for this or anything to push other than swords are cool, and I like swords. My birthday's coming up in about a month, so I've already been kind of dropping not subtle hints to my wife that, hey, Thorin's sword Orcrist, kind of the curved blade from The Hobbit, would I kind of have a spot on my wall that is unoccupied,
place where
a
that could go.
naked spot that needs some dressing.
Well, I like your. I thought that was a very, very punful of you to have a night light. There at your. I noticed that was clever. You get that from your dad, I think.
People have used the word witty before, clever, to describe me. I don't deny any of that, but hey, swords are cool.
If you're listening, that is his light was in the shape of a knight, Knight. So.
Hey, I do say swords are sort of like tattoos, where it's like
you can't just
people
have
always
one.
talk about like getting one, and then like once you get one, it's like, one, I need more, and like pretty soon I'm gonna have a full armory. So hey, swords are cool, and I like swords. But kind of the kind of our main conversation, kind of thing to get into, kind of question, kind of inspired by there's several ways we can come at this one, because I think it speaks to like a wider issue of just sort of agendas, like. There's especially someone like me that does reviews and kind of in the cultural space, just like the word agenda gets used all the time. Like Hollywood is pushing agendas. Everything's an agenda. Kind of the messages. We need to like understand the messages in films. And like it's just sort of these words that get thrown out. I don't think wrongly, but I don't know if we always sort of start to think like, what does that mean? So there's kind of that, but sort of what inspired me to kind of be thinking a bit about this. There's a new movie coming out, Left Behind, Rise of the Antichrist, because we need more Left Behind movies, kind of a reboot of the popular franchise. They made movies about these, and obviously started with like the bestseller books. So that's coming out, I think, actually this week in like limited release. I don't know if it will go beyond limited release or when. I know it's not showing here, so we probably won't have a review for it. But kind of like in like the press tour, like the kind of promoting this film. The actor Sorbo, Hercules from back in the day, is playing like the lead character. He's actually also directing and starring in this. So he's kind of been on this like press tour promoting this movie, why people need to see it. And I just found it interesting because like so much of like the one interview, which on his the episode of the podcast is like fighting Hollywood. And that's sort of how this film was fighting Hollywood. And like most of the interview is not based on like the movie's good and like we need to does this, like it's very much like framing that like this is Hollywood is just driven by agendas these days. Like Hollywood's pushing agendas, like we need to fight back against Hollywood and like the agenda driven Hollywood. And then like the next 30 minutes of the interview is just him unpacking this agenda for this film and like why like very much like agenda driven. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting because there is sort of that narrative of like pushing back against Hollywood and like Hollywood's all agendas now. Like, or we need to like return back to the good old days when like stories were just stories and like it wasn't like everyone was just pushing agendas. And so I thought we kind of get into that. Like, do all movies have agendas? Like, is Hollywood just pushing agendas? Like, was there a time when like there weren't agendas? Like,
what years were those golden ages of agenda-free media?
Yeah, because it seems like there is sort of this assumption that like almost this is like a new thing, and we need to like these days everything, you can't just have a movie, you got to have some ideology-driven thing. So why don't we get into, again, if you guys are watching, let us know in the comment section, kind of add to the conversation, kind of how you feel on this. But maybe just like we can start like more broad, I guess, of like, do films like, because we use those words a lot, like message and agenda, and like, is that accurate? Are films more than that? Does every film have some message they're pushing? Like,
I mean, I think most films will have some kind of message. I think, and I feel like we've talked about this some, is sort of like where's that line between like agenda-driven film and just like a film that tells a story that maybe has a message, where like that the message maybe is secondary to like the story that's being told. And so I think there are there's obviously more films that are like agenda driven, which is like, here's the ideology that we're trying to cram down into this movie, and we want everyone to agree with this ideology or at least be exposed to it. Whereas there's, I think, movies that have an ideology that's sort of baked into the cake, but they're trying to make a movie to the best of their abilities that will be inspiring or, you know, evoke emotion in some way. Not necessarily like, you know, we need to get this message out, but it's like we want to tell this story or make this film about whatever, and it happens to, you know, this is the message of it. So maybe it's like message is incidental versus like fundamental when it comes to movies. But I would say like most movies will have some sort of a message. Not all necessarily, but I do think.
Because I wonder if it's like even just like how you define terms. Because like,
Yeah.
Because I would almost say like, I think a lot of films have messages, but like at least when I think of like a message, like I think of like this film exists to take this belief or this ideology or
Yeah.
this whatever and like instill it or like promote it or like, you know, make people reevaluate like it's like almost like like a teaching sort of thing where like I feel like something that's like I would say most movies have like themes, like it's they're exploring. This is sort of on like kind of a movie. The through line is about like courage and like it's in the character's sort of face, but like does that necessarily mean that like it has a message? It's trying to teach people how to be courageous, or like, or is it just like, hey, we're exploring stuff. Like this is about despair and like brokenness. Like, does it necessarily have to have like a message of like, here's how you overcome brokenness, or here's what like, or is it just like this is the topic we're looking at and like not necessarily any like end point, like because I feel like in some ways I think Christians can oversimplify films to like a message because the films we make are very message driven.
Yeah.
Like most Christian films, I think faith-based films are probably the most like agenda driven films in cinema. Like, you know, most of them might come with like Bible study material. Like and I don't necessarily think that's wrong. I just think it's very evangelistic in purpose, and like it has we pray over it. Hope, you know, may God use this to like make an impact about this or share a message.
Yeah.
That I think because of that, we almost like assume that everything else has to be a mess. Like a film is just like an embodied message.
Yeah, and I think you can find like again, it kind of goes back to sort of outrage and just being mad about stuff. It's like if you have sort of a desire or inclination to be upset about woke culture or whatever it is, then like you can probably find that in just about everything that you look at. And so I think if you come at movies primarily because you think they're agenda driven or like they're trying to like instill some sort of belief in the audience, well then I think you can probably find that in just about every movie. You could say, oh well, this, you know, even though it doesn't say it explicitly, but like this movie is really about X, Y, and Z, and this is why, and they're just trying to corrupt our children or whatever. So I think if your bend is to say, you know, all these movies are like influencing you or like trying to teach you a message or a sermon, then I think you can go out and look at every movie and find that sermon and sort of, you know, speak against it or whatever. And so I think a lot of that comes down to like how you approach film. And I think, again, because a lot of Christian movies, almost all, are sort of message first or agenda first, and then like, here's the agenda, now we got to figure out how to make it into a movie, that I think the assumption is that's what's happening on the other side, is like Hollywood has this agenda, and now we got to just figure out how to put it in this package and make it into a movie.
And like I feel like, to be clear, like
which it does happen.
That does happen. Like, I think because like what was it, like the She-Hulk director, like you like hear some of the quotes from them. It's very much like we want to, you know, what was it, like make a sex positive show for kids to kind of enjoy. Like you hear those and you're like, okay, that sounds like an agenda. Like that's very much. So it's not at all saying like that there isn't that, and like there are clearly films that are pushing it. Like even if it's somewhat ambiguous of like how you kind of know the difference. Like, but kind of the more I've thought about it, like I think like we use sort of message and agenda, and like almost like 8 out of 10 times what I think we actually mean is like just values that we disagree with. Like,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily that, like something like the Lightyear movie, like where it had like a same-sex couple. Like, is that necessarily a message? Like, like if they were heterosexual couple, we wouldn't consider that like a message for, or is it just like, is that a message, or that is like reflecting a value that we find like can take issue with, or like have a conversation about? Because I think that's why some of the whole idea of like we need to return to the time when like stories were just stories. Like, I think what we really mean, because like Hollywood's always been agenda driven. Like, Christians are agenda driven, like conservatives are agenda driven, liberals are agenda driven. Like, I think what we kind of mean is like return to a time when like the agendas reflected the values that we, like the more traditional values, like that were couple, they were straight couples, and they were kind of nuclear families, or they were whatever, they were religious, or the church played a role, or like whatever it is, like, because it's really not, because even like the Sobo, like the Left Behind thing, like that to me shows like it's not really about that we don't want agendas. Like, it's really that we want to like have the power to push our own, like that we want like the values to reflect us. Again, maybe that doesn't change a whole lot of how we engage, but like I feel like reducing everything to like an agenda is different than just sort of approaching films and being like, hey, this is reflecting stuff I don't agree with, I'm not comfortable with. Like, I can learn about the culture or where we're at, rather than just like reducing it to like they're shoving this down my throat. This is what's wrong with Hollywood. Like,
yeah, and I think a good sort of maybe a litmus test for this is like when the press tour happens of a particular film, like what do they talk about? And so I think like for this guy, like he's talking about the agenda of the movie. It's like, okay, well, like, so he's taken an agenda and he's plugging it into a movie. And I think the same with I forget the director's name now, but we talked about it the other day. The Best of Us, or the rest? No. Anyways, it was the one with I'm blanking on all the information about this movie now. But ultimately what they were saying was like, this is an important film to see, like, because it's an important message to talk about this. It had Harry Styles.
Something Darling.
Yeah, don't worry, darling.
Don't Worry, Darling.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. But like that movie, like all the press was about how important it was that people go see this because of the message of the film. And it was like not at all about like how great it was made or the characters in the movie or any of this kind of stuff. It was like see it because it's important. It's like, okay, well, you can see that and say, okay, well, there's an agenda that's been like stuffed into a film to be made. And so I think when you hear how people talk about certain films, I think can also alert you to like, okay, this film probably has more of an agenda than that film, which is, there's some themes that they explore or whatever, but they're not trying to like, you need to see this because it's important. And it's like, we got to get this message out there.
Yeah, because I think as long as like, like a faith-based organization or a conservative network or whatever, like if they're only making films that like reflect their own ideology, then like I feel like that removes the right for us to just criticize like Hollywood and be like, they're agenda driven. They're driven by their ideologies. Right. Clearly, all sides are in some way are motivated by that. And I think the stories we tell do reflect sort of where we come from, and obviously if it's coming from sort of like the world, or whatever, like it's going to reflect those values, like if it's and not traditional ones. So I do think it's important.
And I would say too, it's okay. Like it's okay to have different, like Christians can make films that are very Christian, and atheists make films that are very like. I think that's okay to do, but like let's not pretend that like watch our film because it's like free of agenda. And like those evil people over there with their agenda.
Yeah, it's like the performative part of like, they're the ones, but we just want to tell stories, and
we're just trying to make good movies. It happens
that those stories all reflect our values and not their values. Some of that I don't know. The double standards can drive me crazy, but I do think it is a healthier. Again, there is agendas, but it's healthier just to like, these are stories told by people that reflect different values.
Yeah,
you don't have to agree with those values, but you can actually engage with them beyond just a posture of like, everything's just has Starman and we're just yelling back and forth. But hey, let us know what you guys think. How do you kind of distinguish between like films having messages or agendas, or just films that, hey, they shared a story I don't agree with. That's their story. I have my own story. Like, how do you kind of navigate that? 'Cause I do think, especially now, that's an important conversation for Christians to have. So let us know in the comment section. But just sort of final thoughts. Again, not a whole lot going on as far as like movies and stuff. If the Left Behind movie ends up showing here, maybe I'll go see it and do a review. But I think
That'd be great.
until Ant-Man, I don't know if there's like another movie review coming out. We will have some new articles and stuff coming up on our website. So if you don't check out our website, thecollision.org, I encourage you to do so. But any final thoughts?
I would just say that peanut M&Ms are probably the best ones, and that's my take on it.
Yeah, that would definitely be true in a world that didn't have white chocolate M&Ms. But thanks for joining us, guys. Encourage you guys, check us out. Join us next week. Join the conversation. Subscribe to our channel, like our page, all that stuff if you haven't done so. But most of all, guys, stay safe and continue to collide through the world for Christ.